Our next guest is Sebastian-Dan Naste. He is a privacy and data protection analyst at Cullen International and member of the ASCPD advisory board. His theme is about artificial intelligence, EU perspectives on cybersecurity, data protection, and privacy challenges. Sebastian?
Thanks a lot, Diana, for your introduction, and thanks a lot, Marius, and all the organizers, and of course, all the team behind this event that making possible that during this important week for privacy and data protection, I'm also invited to share my thoughts about this topic. So today I will try to tackle it a little bit, artificial intelligence and how the EU sees AI, and which might be some issues from privacy perspectives, from data protection, and from cybersecurity perspectives. Bear with me because it's a heavy presentation, because the terms might not be that familiar. So I will not tell you which is the secret to be compliant with your AI solution, with the GDPR and with other legislation, but I will try to introduce more AI and to make it a little bit friendly. So as Diana said, I'm now with Cullen International, which is a company based in Brussels, and what we do regulatory analysis from a neutral perspective. So today I will be in my personal capacity presenting this presentation. On the agenda we have today, what is AI? Because I'm afraid a little bit that many people may not understand the concept. Some of us might think that AI is something from the future, or some of us might think that AI is something very old and another digital revolution is coming. Then I will talk a little bit about the complexity and about the relationship between AI and personal data. I will talk then about the EU approach to the AI, and then together we can have some preliminary conclusions. So, what do you think, in your opinion, what is AI and where we can find it? I think that AI is everywhere, right? AI, it's already helping companies to recruit people, is helping universities to accept students, is helping banks to make loan decisions, is helping factories when they are hiring industrial robots, and we might have even an AI product in our houses. Have you ever thought about your robot, which is controllable by your app through your smartphone? AI is also helping the doctors to diagnose patients, and we have seen a lot of use of AI during the COVID crisis, which was used by the doctors to check before and after the COVID infection images with the lungs of some patients. Or AI is also found in autonomous vehicles, or AI it's even found in the algorithm which will recommend a person what kind of videos to watch or movies on a dedicated platform. In my opinion, AI is one of the most powerful tools when it comes to social transformation, and of course when it comes to digital transformation, because in my opinion, AI could improve human skills, could improve our abilities, and could make even a process, could make it more secure and efficient. However, AI also comes with disadvantages, because many people are afraid that their governments might use AI for extended surveillance, or AI might not take into consideration our values, our rights, and some of them, which are more into the extreme part, might also think that AI might even kill us. As we can see, there are already ethical and legal issues which are directly connected with the use of AI, but now let's see when AI appeared. In your opinion, do you think that AI appeared like 1 year ago, 2 years ago? AI appeared in 1950 during a US conference on cyber and mathematics, where computer scientists went there and they were discussing during 8 weeks period about mathematics and about cognitive interactions. So basically, AI was the basis for a project for this conference, and at the beginning, in 1950, the experts actually thought that AI could become operational by 1970, and AI could have a general intelligence as a human by 1970. I think that unfortunately the experts haven't really understood back then the complexity of the AI system and how much does an AI system, how much data does it need to properly operate and to solve some complex problems. It is true that back in the 90s, there were some AI systems which were able to make a distinction between a triangle of a circle, but now the systems evolved and they can easily make a difference between two faces or between multiple faces. But I would like to give you a hint. At the moment, AI is not everything, and everything is not AI. For example, if you have an AI algorithm that is trained to play chess, if you put that algorithm to play poker, then the algorithm will not be able to play poker. So I would like to keep this in mind because it will be important during our presentation today. So what does it mean? What is AI? One of the most broadest definitions that you can find there is that AI, it is the attempt to build machines that perform functions that require intelligence when performed by people. Another interesting definition by ANSSI, which is a standardization body, international standardization body, they define AI as the ability of a system to handle representations, both explicit and implicit, but also procedures to perform tasks that would be considered intelligent if performed by a human. So these are international definitions, but how is AI defined in Europe, or it is defined by Europe? The answer is yes. The European Commission has been active in this field of AI since many years, and they also set up a group of high-level experts which are working on AI issues, which is quite complex. And can you see me now? Yeah. So the European Commission also come with a definition which is more elaborated than the other international definitions. So the AI high-level group of experts, they define AI as softwares or possibly hardwares, systems which are designed by humans, and these systems are having a given complex goal, and then the systems will act either in the physical or either in the digital dimension. Physical dimension because they are referring to the industrial robots, digital dimension because they're referring in the AI systems which are digitally enabled. And these systems are perceiving their environment through data acquisition, to interpreting that kind of data that is inserted. And this data could also come from structured data or unstructured, even unstructured data. And the systems then will reason with the knowledge and will process this information. And then at the end, the system will be able to take decisions based and to take actions based on this data in order to achieve that given goal at the beginning. So indeed, it's a very complex definition, but usually AI systems, as I said before, can only perform a fraction of the activities listed in the definition. So for example, there are AI systems which are used only for pattern recognition, for example, recognizing images of plants or animals, or human faces, or even attitudes, even habits of one. Then AI can also be used for language processing. So for example, to understand various spoken languages, to translate from one language into another, to fight spam, or to answer queries. So imagine that there is a chatbot for a bank, and if you have an issue, you go directly on the website of that bank, and you type your problem, and then you type your data to log in, and then that chatbot will direct you to deal with your situation. Also, AI is here to help, and AI is here to come with practical suggestions. For example, AI is recommending to one person or to a company what kind of purchases to do, or AI is helping with logistics, AI is helping with planning, or with optimizing some industrial processes. At the moment, AI is also helping in general the planet to combat the climate change and to see which are the best solutions to be taken by the national governments. However, AI systems can also be improved and to have multiple capacities, such as self-driving cars or military or even care robots that were started to being used more and more on the war field. To continue, I will talk a little bit about the interaction between artificial intelligence, big data, or personal data. So we already know that an AI model, for example, in the medical domain, may connect the symptoms with some diseases, as we have seen, as I explained to you during the COVID. Many doctors were using images to analyze the lungs of patients before and after, and based on the results, they were able to see and to deal with the medical issue for the patient. And some AI systems were even used to discover COVID in the lungs of the patients, which were exactly analyzing the pictures before the potential infection and after the potential infection. But also AI is also used to connect online behavior. So for example, to connect your friends, posts on a social platform, even posts on likes on that platform, but also could also connect with the psychological attitude, with your mood. Maybe in one day you are stressed or you are sad, and maybe some ads will pop out on your social platform. Maybe in another day you are just happy or just interested to go into a holiday, and then other ads will pop up to your screen. And exactly this is what I was talking about targeted advertising that is used by AI. How does it work in practice? So basically, targeted advertising could be based on records which are linked to characteristics and behavior. What kind of characteristics? So for example, what gender are you? What age do you have? Your social background, your purchase history, your web browsing, and even your responses to ads. And for example, the targeted advertising is really well explained in a movie that was recently published on a video platform, and I will encourage you to watch it. Send me a message and I will tell you what movie is about, but I'm sure that many people have already watched that movie. I give you a hint, it is called Social, and then of course it's easy to be found on the internet. But also AI is also helping with the job applications. So we might have seen when applying for various jobs. In my case, I was applying to jobs in the Netherlands because I was studying there, and after submitting my application, after 1 to 3 minutes, I was already receiving the negative feedback because I was not accepted for that job, and I was thinking why. And then I knew that the algorithm was trying to assess if in my CV Dutch language was written or not, and based on that, the algorithm just took the decision to reject me and not to even allow me to get into the first stage of the application, which would have been the interview with that particular company or entity. So yes, AI is also used for job applications and will assess previous education, employment history, even aptitude tests if this kind of data is available. As mentioned before, AI is also helping banks to assess one person's ability to borrow money, and to assess the ability of this person to see if the person paid a previous credit, or if the person has multiple credits, and so on and so forth. And do you remember what I told you, that the experts were trying to have AI machine as smart as a human by 1917? Unfortunately, there's not even possible in the current in the current period where we live. But it's true that AI became hungry for the data. The experts miscalculated the vast amount of data and computing power that an AI system would need to analyze and then to be able to solve the complex societal problems. Imagine this. At the beginning, AI is like a baby, and the algorithm or the AI application doesn't know anything when it's created. So, for example, if a child, right, if a toddler would eat a strawberry or a blueberry, his or her mind will see, okay, this is good, the taste is good, this is a fruit. But if you give to a toddler a BlackBerry, which is the phone, then the toddler will make the difference. Blueberry, strawberry is good to eat. Blueberry, it's only good to call mama, or is used by the parent. When you train the AI algorithm, you need to explain the difference between strawberry, blueberry, and BlackBerry, because the AI system might not understand which is the difference, because they all have berry, and in its opinion might think that, okay, also the BlackBerry is good to eat, but in fact is not. This is the reason why the AI system needs a lot of labeled data. This is actually labeling data. When you insert data into an algorithm and you label the data, so basically under the fruits category would be a blueberry or a strawberry or grapes or bananas, and then in not eatable categories but which are similar to the eatable categories of the fruits, you could include blackberries or other items. How does it happen in reality? It's very complicated. So basically here I chose to present the AI life cycle for machine learning. Why for machine learning? Because there are so many techniques, there are so many technologies, and there are so many algorithms and models which are involved in the AI systems that the mapping the entirety of an AI cycle would not be possible at all. And machine learning is very used nowadays, and it's used a lot in the development of the AI systems, and is very prominent on the market. So as mentioned before, data is the most valuable asset for AI, and such data is continuously transformed along this AI cycle. We can see that we have phases like design, like development, installation, deployment, results, updates, then again implementation, again deployment. So we can see that is a circle. And what's important when securing these AI systems, the confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So basically the CIA triad of the systems, but also of the data throughout the entire life cycle of the process. So at every time the triad, the cyber experts or even the privacy experts might know the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of the data has to be achieved. And I will not go through all the design phases of an AI system, but I will only choose a few of them to discuss in particular. So we know that the AI system needs a lot of data, right? But how could this system obtain the data? It could be from a multitude of sources, could be from different sensors, could be from CCTV cameras, could be from our mobile phones, could be from different medical devices, could be even from some digital assets such as trade platforms, or could be information from documents, could be information from some log files. So data can be inputted in very different forms. Could be from text, images, video, audio, and the data could be at this stage structured or unstructured. So what kind of challenges do you think that we have at this moment? We have the security challenge related to the data itself, right? Because the data has to be secured when it's transmitted and when it's stored in the AI algorithm. And then of course we have the integrity challenges, because the integrity or the quality of the data is a critical success factor for the machine learning system. As I told you, if we have in the system BlackBerry is a fruit, then the system, based on that assumption, will think that BlackBerry is a fruit, and then might give errors to when assessing fruits, or when assessing some products in a shop, for example. But also data at this moment can be poisoned through malicious activities. So for example, data can be degraded accidentally. So imagine that you have a lot of data, you have a full database of images, and then you suffer a cyber attack, and then all that data is not gone, but you cannot make the system to see the pixels behind that data. So then basically you have an empty database of images which don't say anything. Then moving on the data curation. Data curation is when one will play with the data. It could be the developer, it could be the employee involved in that AI project, it could be anyone. So basically you are playing with the data. You have all the data from all the sources, but you have different areas of data. Have you ever had the situation when in Microsoft Excel you had the problem when you had to copy and paste data from another table? Yes, so basically here the developer behind will have to integrate the data from multiple sources, we'll have to identify the errors, and we also have to label the data. And it's very, again, at this stage, it's highly important to keep the data as accurate, as complete as possible. Then moving on to the next step. The next step is about training the data. What does it mean? This could be defined as the most critical steps because it will establish the behavior of the application. So now you train the AI system how to act, how to react based on the data that was inserted in the system. So we'll present the training data part will present particular challenges in relation to security, but also in relation to learning, because it's the core machine learning process. And again, it is critical also at this stage to have training data sets of high quality, because any inconsistencies could lead to the model behaving incorrectly. So imagine this, you have an AI system which is using biometric data, and we have at the border, right, when you go and you check your passport, and your passport will appear that is an European passport, and then the system will say that the passport is not coming from an EU country, and you need to stay in the queue, you need to get the visa. So such issues might happen. But also we have confidentiality challenges at this moment, because the data set confidentiality can be also compromised by an attacker, which might have knowledge about that algorithm. So if there was an ex-employee that was working on the algorithm implementation, or even another malicious actor with no knowledge about the operation of the algorithm, might also compromise that data. I hope that you are still here with me. Now I would like to present you what the EU was doing and when AI became a hot topic for the agenda in Brussels. This was, as I said, the European Commission set up the high-level group of experts in 2016, if I'm not mistaken, and the European Commission also published a white paper on artificial intelligence, a European approach to excellence and trust. What does it mean? Basically, white papers are documents which are showing the intention of the European Commission in a specific area. So basically, these are some of proposals, but before the legislative proposals, which are launched in the market and which are launched publicly for all the stakeholders which are involved to comment based on what the Commission is thinking about how to tackle some issues, in our case, how to tackle artificial intelligence. Basically, in the white paper presented by the Commission last year, there are two ecosystems presented: ecosystem of excellence and then ecosystem of trust. What does it mean? It means that an ecosystem of excellence, the European Union would like to foster the development and would like to foster the uptake of artificial intelligence in Europe, including in SMEs, in different entities, even in public administration. Ecosystem of trust refers to address the risks that AI applications might pose to fundamental rights, as we have seen before, but also to safety. And also under this pillar, under the ecosystem of trust, the European Commission would like to have a regulatory framework to deal with the high-risk AI applications. Do they come with a definition? Unfortunately not. So basically, the European Commission didn't want to propose an AI definition, but they are closely following the definition that I presented to you, the one from 2018. Nevertheless, the Commission noted that any future definition of AI, which could be included in a future AI legislation, will need to be sufficiently flexible to accommodate the technical progress that is happening now in 2021, or when is going to be the year of the AI legislation, while data and algorithms will be key elements of this definition. Why? Because as we know, AI needs a lot of data, and algorithms are the instructions that you are giving to the system what to do with this data. Another important thing to mention here is the AI risk-based approach, which is focusing on high-risk applications. I give you an example. Imagine this: we have autonomous vehicles, right? But we have autonomous vehicles driving in the city center of Brussels, and then we have autonomous vehicles which are helping the employees of a harbor to deal with the cargoes and to deal with everything. You might say that the risk of having one car without a driver in a city center full of people might be higher than having a car without a driver in a harbor. This might be correct, and this is also the approach of the European Commission, which adopted a risk-based approach where high-risk AI applications may be subject to mandatory requirements and may be also subject to a prior conformity assessment. How does it look like at the moment? We don't know yet, but we can only guess. A conformity assessment that is done now, for example, with the fridges or with the wheels, when you have the label that one particular model of a tire consumes that kind of energy, it has that amount of decibels, could be used during winter, could be used during summer. So basically, the European Commission suggests that the AI application should be considered higher risk only when two cumulative criteria will be fulfilled, basically the sector and then the use. Why focusing on the sector? Because the European Commission aims to ensure that the regulatory action is targeted on the areas where risks are expected the most likely to occur. And then the use of the application. Of course, the application would be considered high risk if the application in the sector in question is used in a manner where significant risks are likely to rise, as I gave you the example with the car in the harbor. But there are also some exceptions from this scenario. There could be exceptional cases where the use of AI applications could be considered to be high risk, irrespective of the sector concerned. So, for example, remember the AI recruitment tools. This might be a high risk applications, or also the remote biometric identification. But which are the requirements for? How do we know that one AI application is high risk or is not high risk? Basically, the European Commission came and they proposed that for AI risk cases, the AI system should be transparent, should be traceable, and should guarantee human oversight. So all these are requirements after we have done the assessment that an AI application is high risk. These need to be done either by the developer, either by the founder of the application, etc. But also, this might impose obligations for the authorities, because the authorities should be also able to test and to certify that the data used by the algorithms is unbiased, for example, or unbiased data was used to train the high-risk systems to perform properly, and also that the systems are in line with the respect for fundamental rights, and of course, in particular, with the non-discrimination. There could be other additional requirements, for example, for facial recognition or for training data. We know that there are some places in some countries where the data protection authorities are already allowing some companies to test their algorithms, to test what's happening there with the algorithms and which are the outcomes of using such an algorithm. But also important to mention is the data and record keeping. So basically, the entity dealing with AI risk applications will need to have accurate records of the data used to train and test the AI. And also some information will have to be provided to the persons to inform someone when they are interacted with an AI system, and to ensure that this transparency, that the person will be at every time able to make the distinction between a chatbot and between an employee of a company or of an entity. How does it look in reality? So the European Commission is thinking that AI in practice could look like this. A prior conformity assessment would be necessary before deploying the AI solution on the market, and those conformity assessments for AI high-risk application will be part of the conformity assessment mechanisms that already exist for a large number of products which are circulating in the internal market. And also, the legal compliance checks will have to be done by the competent national authorities. What about voluntary labeling? So, voluntary labeling will work like this. So, for example, for AI applications that are not high risk, an option for the company would be to establish a voluntary labeling scheme. Of course, in addition to applicable legislation, we have seen this endeavor of the European Commission trying to use this labeling also for cybersecurity future products under the Cybersecurity Act, or even also for under the GDPR. There are some specifications based on that. How the governance will be ensured? So basically, the European Commission would like to have a structure. It's going to be kind of a hybrid, like the Data Protection Authority structure and with the EDPB is working right now. Basically, it's going to be a framework for cooperation of national competent authorities, because this is necessary to avoid fragmentation of responsibilities across the EU. And this governance will play a very important role when we are talking about AI standardization, AI certification, or the implementation of a legal framework, to issuing guidance, to issuing opinions, and expertises. Which are the risks to fundamental rights, and which are the risks also to data protection? So in the AI white paper, the Commission acknowledged that some characteristics of artificial intelligence might pose risks to fundamental rights. As mentioned before, AI could be used for mass surveillance, either by authorities or also by private actors, for example, when spying on their employers or observing their employers, if they are working, if they are productive or not. AI could be also used for content moderation, but also AI could also be used for automated decision-making, as I told you. It is true that at the moment, ADMS's automated decision-making systems are covered in part by the GDPR, and GDPR refers to ADM as decisions which are taken by technological means without human intervention, so directly referring to algorithms. So basically, under the GDPR, the data controllers can take decisions based on automated processing. However, as mentioned before, controllers must inform individuals about the logic involved, about the consequences of such processing operations. But what's interesting, GDPR prohibits the decisions exclusively which are based on automated decision processing. So, for example, if there is an automated refusal of an online credit application, as it was happening in my case when applying for jobs, and I don't know if a human or not was involved, then this is considered a breach of the GDPR. However, this provision does not apply if the controller will have the explicit consent for automated decision-making systems. And we also know that the European data protection authorities have delivered back in 2018, if I'm not mistaken, guidelines for companies to use the automated decision-making. However, because of the updates which are currently happening in terms of legislation with this AI white paper and with other technological developments, the Commission mentioned that it will monitor and will assess the application of GDPR on a continuous basis when it comes to artificial intelligence. And another risk could be facial recognition, and the European Commission also acknowledged that facial recognition can take a lot of different forms. For example, when we are using our face to unlock the smartphone, or when, as I told you before, when we authenticate ourselves, when are using the border automated crossing systems, or when we hand out our IDs or whatever, you know, to be scanned or to be checked. So basically, remote biometric identification happens when an image of a person is checked against a database, so it's one-to-many matching, and this is considered by the European Commission and by the European Union intrusive, and in principle is prohibited by the law, because the European data protection, in principle, they prohibit processing, basically Article 9, if I'm not mistaken, from GDPR, in principle prohibits the processing of biometric data for uniquely identifying a natural person, of course, except some conditions. Okay, what about risks or to safety or liability? As we know that an autonomous vehicle might lose control and might provoke some damages, maybe even lost life damages, for example. This is another discussion for another session that the organizers might organize in the future. Some conclusions that we can take together. We have seen that artificial intelligence went through a very fast development during the past years. We have seen that in the 1950s, the experts were expecting that AI could be as smart as a human, but that is not happening, not even now now today. AI comes with many economic, social, cultural opportunities. However, these opportunities, they came along with serious risks, such as unemployment, inequality, discrimination, social exclusion, surveillance, or manipulation. As mentioned, the AI systems, they learn to make predictions, but they learn to make predictions based on a vast amount of data that is coming. So we know AI is hungry for data. And AI, as I said, presents societal opportunities and also presents a lot of risks. However, even if AI is not explicitly tackled by the GDPR, I think that some provisions of the regulation are relevant to AI developers, and it is true that some provisions are even challenged by the development of AI. For example, I'm thinking now at the GDPR provisions, which are related to privacy by design or privacy by default. But in my opinion, I think that AI is compatible with GDPR, and GDPR allows for the development of AI applications together with the big data applications, because in my opinion, a strong balance could be achieved between data protection and also other social and economic interests, but it also provides limited guidance on how one entity could achieve this goal. This is true. And I think that with the future AI legislation, or with the future AI proposals that the European Commission might come this year, we might get some answers in that way. Thanks a lot for your time. This was my presentation. If you have any other questions or comments, please send them to this email address. I'm not sure why I'm not seeing anyone, but I see that there is a question in the chat. So basically, Claudio is asking, GDPR and the EU community push in favor to AI clear boxes rather than AI black boxes. These decisions want to help transparency in the data process and protection. What do you think about it? Claudia, thanks for your question. Indeed, it's a very interesting question. I think that, as I said before, the European Commission would like to develop an AI ecosystem to allow an entity to develop AI based on EU data, right? And also respecting the EU values and respecting the EU rights. And I think that with this black boxes, why the European Commission is against, I think that, for example, in Sweden, if I'm not mistaken, the Data Protection Authority, they allowed these sandboxes for entities to develop their AI solutions, and there you can insert your data, and you can check if your algorithm works, or if the algorithm doesn't work properly. So I think that the EU is pushing for a transparency decision to explain to the user that personal data will be processed by an AI system. And I think that what the European Commission is doing nowadays, it's very hard for them, because imagine that when you are trying to explain a person how their personal data will be processed is difficult, but put them in the shoes of a developer, how to explain that the personal data will be processed by an AI system. And I think that transparency will play here an important role. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sebastian, for your presentation. Looks like we have another question. Do you think that even through services like WhatsApp or Telegram or Signal cannot read our messages, AI does read our messages? How is our data even safe?
I'm not in the measure to comment whether or not WhatsApp, Telegram, or Signal can or cannot read our messages, or if their algorithm behind can or cannot read our messages. What I'm sure is that AI can be used for both purposes. So AI can be either used to keep our data protected or to keep our data encrypted, but also AI could be used for bad purposes. So basically to decrypt the data, to have facial recognition of some persons. I know that there was circulating a database with 3 billion images for everyone from our social platforms. So AI, it is true that AI can be used with bad purposes and for good purposes for any other technology. But to answer to your question, I don't think that at the moment WhatsApp or Telegram or other platform messages could read the messages, because this would be a breach, a massive breach for privacy and data protection. AI indeed can analyze the behavior, and AI indeed might analyze the metadata used behind these applications, and AI might be able also to use what other applications you have installed in your smartphone. So maybe that's why it was the case when using a message application, you were talking about one product, and then on a platform you would have seen that product. So I think that we are talking here about metadata, because in my opinion, the entities which are offering this messaging applications, they are not interested in the content of our discussions, because they cannot sell you anything based on your content. But what they can do, they can sell you based on your behavior, based on what you are searching, based on what kind of applications you have installed in your smartphone, based on with how many persons do you talk. I hope that I answered to your question in the most diplomatic possible way. Thank you.
Thank you, Sebastian. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we are closing our talk session for today. And I want to say thank you again to Daniela, to Șerban, to Sebastian, and to Roland for being today with us and sharing all this important information. We will see each other at 5:30 actually with our last session for today. Thank you all again. Thank you.